Hi everyone, I am filming at home today. Thought I'd give you a different setting than just having to look at me against the same backdrop every time. However, my plan slightly failed because I had intended to do stitch along with my needlepoint canvas that I'm working on at the moment. However, I forgot to bring my second phone. Usually I have a kind of overhead phone and one filming to me so you can see both at the same time. But I brought the tripod, I brought everything, I just did not bring the phone. So it probably is a blessing because actually it's quite hard to hold needlepoint still when you're filming anyway. And so what I will do is I'll still stitch my piece and I'll show you it all at the end fully. But it's going to be slightly harder for you to see it than usual. But most of you probably just listen whilst you're doing something anyway, so I imagine you don't really need the visual. And you can watch Roger over there on the sofa, see if he moves, and that can be your entertainment. So anyway, that is a bit of where we are. Today I want to talk on a video all about the idea of kind of artist versus designer versus business owner. Should you kind of set up a business or should you try just sell your own art? And also how, if you do set up a business, how I feel like I've managed to maintain creative freedom in it. So that is the topic today. Let's dig in. So before I go into kind of explaining a little bit about why I kind of chose the business route for my creative career, I just want to explain a little what I perceive the difference between the routes to be and the pros, cons of each route. But please comment because I'd love to know what you think about any of this along the way, because I find it a really interesting topic and I think it's one that loads of creatives, whether you're creatively side hustling, whether you're already working as an artist, whether you're thinking about starting a business, lots of people kind of really and ah with how should I do this? How do I make it commercially viable for me? So do kind of comment away. So what I would say firstly for an artist, when I talk about artists, I am really thinking about the idea of someone who sells their work. It's someone who maybe you do gallery exhibitions, you create pieces in series. You know, you can imagine going on an artist's website where they have a gallery of their paintings and maybe they've got a CV showing all the exhibitions they've been in and just a contact form for kind of a price list. That sort of creative. That's what I'm thinking when I say artist. When I say designer, I'm thinking people like me who design a product, but they are not selling their own finished work. They're not selling the output of the finished piece. And instead they are designing something for other people to use or for other people to make, like I do. And then the third is a business owner. And the business owner one can be a separate role because you can start a creative business without being the creative, or sometimes the creative business leader is also the designer, like in my case. But actually that's quite unusual in lots of the big needlepoint businesses and things like that. The people who run them, the people who own them, are not the people who do the designs. So actually it can be quite unusual in some creative industries to have the designer at the top, or quite often you'd have a co-founders. You'd have a business side and you would have a creative side. So that's kind of how I perceive the roles. And the reason this has come up for me to talk about with you today, and I thought would be interesting, is because I was featured in an article a couple of weeks ago. I talking about the fabled thread, and it said started by artist Eppie Thompson. And that sort of phrase really struck me in my tracks, made me feel like firstly, it's incredible. I thought that's incredibly complimentary. Like, what a compliment to be called an artist. But then it made me feel like a real imposter. Like, I'm not an artist. I would never ever describe myself to anyone as an artist. And so it made me feel actually pretty like intimidated in a way. So if you're at the beginning of a creative journey, and like I was, and I'll go on to that in the next section, explain my own journey, but if you're at the beginning, you really have a choice about how are you intending to do this creativity thing. Like following a creative life is not straightforward. It's not like my first job and just join a grad scheme in accountancy, train, and Bob's your uncle, off you go on your career. Like creativity, you have to be a lot more kind of self-directed and find how to make it work for your life. So I think for me, what feels very challenging and what always felt challenging about the idea of being an artist was the pressure and the financial instability of it. You are very dependent on your own creation because you are then asking someone to put value on that creation itself. And if you have a period where you don't feel that creative, if you have a period where your work you're really proud of, but it doesn't seem to be resonating with an audience, you could feel an immense sort of personal exposure, very intense emotional exposure, and be living with a situation where you don't really know if next year's going to be feast or famine. This year will not tell you how next year will be. There is trends in art, and one year you could be hot and one year you could be not, and that might not be anything changed in the quality of your art. So that's, for me, always felt, just as an artist, I think it would take immense courage, and courage personally I would not feel like I have. Whereas, say, being a designer, the benefit for me of designing is that you are one step removed from the end result. So you feel a little bit more like you can express yourself, but you're not being judged because you're just the designer. You know, you're not trying to sell something you've made with your fair hands. You're trying to sell an idea of what you've created. And so it feels less intense, but then there is the ability to build more scalability, and with that, kind of predictable income from it. Because if you design a product, then basically it can be created quite a few times. It doesn't have to be created by your hands, so you can scale it up and you can kind of have that go out over and over again. If you are a textile artist, it is one of the least scalable things imaginable. You know, textiles take an absolute lifetime. The idea that anyone ever really quite is able to kind of understand the amount of time that has gone into a textiles project, and yet still it's valued lower than painting. Even though painting, granted, some paintings take a long time, but I would say most paintings do not take anywhere near as long as textiles. So that, for me, is why the designer side appealed. But obviously you could go and just work as a designer somewhere. However, I had my own strong creative vision. I'm so sure, like lots of other people, also have a creative vision, in which case you have no choice but to become a designer business owner. And whether you like it or not, the business owner side of it becomes absolutely sort of saddled alongside the designer side if you feel really strongly that you want to follow your own aesthetic. If you've watched any of the videos about kind of how I started the business or my background or anything, then you'll already know this, but basically I do not come from any kind of art background. I trained in finance, I trained as an accountant, and I worked in corporate finance for years. So I'd be lying if the business route wasn't just really the only choice for me. You know, it's the only thing really I had any confidence in my ability to do. I didn't have great confidence in my ability to design, I didn't have great confidence in my ability to make, but I did have great confidence in my ability to read a balance sheet, read a profit and loss, to understand the commercials of a business. So from the very beginning, for me, I wanted to be able to channel my creativity into a business. And part of that, there was a two-pronged thing there. One of them was that I've talked about it before, but I really wanted to get more people sewing. I wanted to encourage more people to make. And the way I did that was by giving them the tools, by teaching them how to make, not by showing them finished pieces. So firstly, for me, from the mission perspective, a business makes most sense to hit most people. But secondly, I had this totally naive idea that we're all sold this idea of passive income. I thought, oh, excellent, I'll just start a business and then I'll have this passive income stream, and then in all my spare time I'll, work in my studio, I'll work on passion projects, I'll learn all my etching, I'll do some sculpture, I'll do ceramics. And I thought, we're fed the line, there's even groups called things like smart passive income. And I genuinely believe if you care about what you do, if you care about the business you create, passive income is not a real thing. There is nothing passive about having a business. But it doesn't mean that wasn't one of the reasons I started in the first place, was thinking, I'll start this business and then I'll be passively have the financial stability that enables me to do the weirder and wackier projects. So that was my decision process in choosing to make a business. But now I'm so grateful for the decision that I made to start a business. And as much as, like I say, it's incredibly hard work having a business, actually there's a couple of things that I think really make a huge difference being a designer behind a creative business than an artist. So firstly, I'm grateful for the choice this business gives me. It can be scalable, and it gives me flexibility to pursue multiple interests in one go. And for me, maybe you are like me, where you're a bit of a kind of part right, part left side of the brain kind of person. So I love sewing whilst listening to a business book. I will happily spend hours reading company annual reports. I know it's so sad, and please don't judge me for it, but actually, for me, I really am fascinated by business. I find it really interesting. I find the sort of strategic challenges of business, of creating something, of building something from nothing, I find fascinating, albeit terrifying and stressful. But I work so hard because I'm sort of fascinated by the whole process, and I enjoy this creation. I'm really grateful for the ability business has to enable me to pursue multiple different interests in one go, which I think would be much harder if I pursued a fine art route, because you would sort of be requiring or viewed as one way. You know, you could start, say, a Substack as a sideline, but it would feel a little bit like, oh, maybe you're being a bit kind of, is your art not going so well because you're starting a Substack or something? You know, maybe you'd be judged for it in a way that you'd never be judged because you've got a business. Because of course you would do something like that because you're trying to promote your business. There's a lot more judgment that goes on, I think, in art than in the way you kind of do with business. But the other thing is it enables me to scale. And through being able to scale, I'm able to build to a point where we can have more flexibility about how my job evolves. And as much as, say, again, you can get scale as an artist, as a working artist, it again is much harder to do because you sort of have to prove out your success more in order to be able to potentially give up some of the jobs you don't enjoy as much. And I genuinely think there's a business model out there for sort of AI assistants designed for artists. There's ones I've seen that have launched for AI assistants for influencers and things like that. But of my artist friends, the number of them that spend most of their days, or a lot of their time, doing admin, responding to commission inquiries that never come through to anything, shipping paintings out for open calls, like, there is still so much admin, and it's a little bit hard until you get to a certain point to scale that out of your hands. Whereas if you're in a business, it's easier to kind of scale away the jobs that aren't as relevant for you, or that your skill set is not best matched to. It's harder to do that as an artist. You have to be the marketer, you have to be the administrator, you know, you've got to be all these things. Until I started talking about this, I don't think I realised quite how passionate I am about business. It's amazing these videos really kind of bring something out in you. But the other side that for me, when I chose the business route, another bit of it that feels more unexpected was actually the fact you do have some personal emotional protection through the fact you aren't the maker. What I mean by that is, if one of my designs doesn't go down really well, I don't feel personally like it's a comment on me. And I am not sure how I would deal with it if it was because I'd created a piece and no one wanted it. I think I would really struggle with that. So actually, I don't think I have the sort of strength to deal with the insecurity for me that would come from creating art. And that is not something I chose, but it's only now that I do it, reflecting on, say, any launches where the products haven't immediately hit the ground running or things like that. I don't think they affect me in the same way as they would for, say, some of my friends who are actual artists. And then actually, what's really interesting is having to fit your designs into a business, fit your designs into a way that is commercially viable, has helped me develop my identity in a way that I'm not sure I would have done if I had been able to work with total freedom alone. And so what I mean by that is that I am having to create pieces to a criteria. I am limited. So as much as I can have certain pieces which are wilder and freer and everything like that, I also want pieces that appeal to total beginners. I want pieces that will appeal to a range of different characters. I want pieces that kind of could fit in a range of different homes. I want anyone to be able to come to the website and feel like, oh, there's something there for me. And that has actually meant that I have had to kind of almost set myself briefs and say, right, you're designing this range, and this range is going to involve just 2 stitches, and it has to take 6 to 7 hours for someone to make. You know, I set myself this criteria, and actually that kind of creative problem solving to then work in these different projects and still bring your own identity to it, so it really obviously looks like a fabled thread piece, that has actually really enabled me to find my creative identity. So as much as for lots of people, the idea of going into kind of business rather than art, or like, you know, rather than you're exactly following your own artistic passion with no other external input, I think actually that could be more limiting, because I could be far more inclined to get myself stuck in a rut, stuck in a way of doing things, which I can't do as a business because I have to evolve, because I've got to bring you interesting things. So that, I think, has been really unexpected, that actually almost it can, in a way, make me feel more creative. And through that, it's enabled me to grow as both a creative, but I've also been able to grow as a kind of commercially. I've been able to learn an awful lot, learn more than I would ever imagine, and really started to find a passion in the whole kind of entrepreneurship, business side of things. I've really started to find real pleasure and joy in that. And finally, I actually think being an artist itself is quite an independent thing. Whereas by being a business, you are interacting, you know, we're interacting with 100,000 customers a month. Every single one of those is someone whose life you impact. Whereas if I was a textile artist selling my own textile work, I maybe would be able to produce 20 pieces a year, you know, 30 pieces a year. I could impact far fewer people than I can through what I am choosing to do now. And it also has given me a sense of community, so I don't feel isolated, and I do feel like I can go to people and say, hey, what do you think of this? I don't have to worry as much about showing vulnerability. That's a lot of reasons, but they're all the reasons really for me why I personally chose the route of having a business. Now, the thing that I think put people off the whole concept is, firstly, is it kind of disingenuous? Do you end up watering down your own creative credibility by not just backing yourself to be an artist? Is there something that you should have to struggle, you should have to suffer for your art, you know, that whole idea? So that, I think, is one of the reasons people get put off. And then also I think an awful lot of people get put off because you potentially in the short term you take on more financial risk, because you actually have to produce a product, you've got to have inventory, and so that can be, for many people, one of the reasons that puts them off doing it. Whereas actually if you work just independently as an artist, you have less immediate upfront cost. So they're the kind of reasons, most, I think, the main ones that people don't pursue this side of things. I guess a third is that people think you won't have any time for art if you follow a business route, and that's what I want to talk about now, is how do you maintain creative freedom, and how do I feel like I've maintained creative freedom within my business. If you are a creative person and you are thinking about starting a creative business, then I think this is one of the biggest concerns a lot of people have. This idea of, but I'm going to become trapped. How do I maintain my own creative freedom? And that's one thing that I've worked really hard on ensuring I can do. And it's one of the reasons that the business is quite random in a way. So first key thing, I think, to maintaining creative freedom is enabling your business to evolve with your interests, not becoming fixed in time. And one of the ways we've done that is by enabling our product collection to grow, so that the creative activities I am doing in order to promote that product align with what I'm interested in at that point in time. And I'll give examples of those specific projects in the next section, but that's one of the key things, I think, enabling your business to evolve with you, so that as your skills grow or as your interests change, actually your products do too, and having faith that your customers are going to come along with you on that journey, and they are also going to embrace the fact your business is evolving. So I think that's the really first important thing of maintaining creative freedom. The second one, I think, is isolating time for creativity. And whether you are working as an artist, or whether you're working creatively on the side and you've got another main job that you're doing, or if you're like me, running a creative business, regardless of who you are or where you're at, there is this balance of how do you find your creative time. So for me, I've actually never found it easy to fit creativity in the cracks. Some people are amazing at, you get 15 minutes and you can whip out a few drawings, or, you know, you can do a little tiny bit of creative project in small bits of time. It's just not me. Like, I'm a messy worker. I want loads of space. I quite want isolation. I don't really like to be with other people when I'm working on designs or anything. I would just want to be in my own space. And that can't often happen during the week. It can't happen when we're busy in the studio, and it can't happen if I only have a day for it, because I'm going to spend all my time making a mess than tidying the mess. So for me, what I've actually found works is, instead of that, I sort of isolate 2 months a year, January and August, and they are kind of my creative playtime months, and they're almost like my recuperation. So in January, I just try and spend as little time working on the business as I humanly can. Like, we don't launch new things really in January, or if we do, everything we launch in January has been planned beforehand. Luckily, I have an amazing team who are quite happy with this whole setup, and so they're quite happy to sort of give me freedom in January, and we sort of and they know that that time is really almost quite like sacred to me. And the same goes in August. And August is an easier one because August is really generally quite quiet across the board. You know, we're an embroidery business. It is a seasonal hobby. So if August is quiet anyway, then I might as well be spending that quiet time working creatively. So I basically have 2 months a year that give me the space to recharge, and that enables me to come back to the business with new ideas for the new designs we're going to launch, but also it gives me the ability to kind of fall in love with everything I do all over again, which if I didn't have that period of time, I could easily fall out of love with my business, and then I could lose connection to all the people I'm trying to encourage to make things if I'm not actively making myself. So I think that's the second one for maintaining creative freedom, is you've got to have prioritised time. The third, I think, is having the confidence to blur the lines between your artistic vision and your products. And this is kind of one example. This is going to be part of this range behind me, the kind of woolies on the wall. It's a big product, like they're massive kits. They're really niche in a way. We don't sell that many of them, but for the people who do get them, they absolutely love them. They're the kits I'm the most proud of. They're an exact example of where I've kind of blurred the line a bit at times between art and business, because they are not our most commercially successful product. We're not going to ever sell loads of them, but having a few of those enables me to really express myself fully in the work that I want to give to other people. And so I think it's that bit of have your bread and butter, but then also have some wild cards that really excite you. And don't worry if they don't really excite everyone, because you don't need every single thing to excite everyone. You just need, with things like the woolies, I only need to excite a handful of people, and those people are really going to be so enthusiastic about what you've created. So that's kind of my 3 things, I think, for kind of tips I would give anyone else for how to maintain creative freedom within the business. With all that in mind, I wanted to end just talking about how I see the business growing over time, and how I think that feels really exciting for me from a personal creative perspective. So at base level, you know, I adore this business. I love this business. I love everything about it. I love our customers. I love our community. I love our team. I love the product. I do not see that love weakening, fading. I've been running it for 5 years now, and I am only more enthusiastic now than I was when I started. For me, this is a business for life. This is the sort of thing where I hope to be doing it when I'm grey and old. I hope still to have the fabled thread and still to be channeling my creativity into something that interacts with other people as well. So what's important for me is that this business isn't just about products. It has to be about that long-term vision in mind. And when we think about anything new we're doing, it will always be with that long-term vision of, I want this to be able to capture not only all my creative interests, but also where my creative interests may go. So I have to have things that are there which enable me to capture those. And as that happens, I think the really important thing I often think is that I am so not unique. I'm not a unique person. And if I am interested, say, in needlepoint one day, and then I'm interested in embroidery the other, but then the day after I want something really quick, so I might want to do some printmaking, or maybe I enjoy just doing a bit of writing, or maybe I enjoy going and looking at a museum. You know, if I have these interests, so do other people. So if I actually don't try and appeal to all my interests, then I'm not going to enable us as a business to appeal to everyone else's interests too. And whilst some people will just sort of think, this is my discipline, I'm going to stick with it, I actually think those people are quite few and far between. I think lots of creative people dabble. Like, we're kind of serial hobbyists, as someone said to me. So I want the business to grow with our customers, and the business to enable our customers to grow, because in doing that, it enables me to grow as well, because I have to develop new skills. I have to develop new things so that I can bring you things that are going to find interesting. So there's kind of 4 things that we've done, I think, that really highlight this whole idea of how the business grows to make sure we have the ability to have offerings that can challenge me creatively and challenge you creatively. So the first one is offering limited edition kits, and we launched those at the start of this year. And the reason we launched limited edition kits was because I wanted to stitch more complicated pieces. As much as I do want all our designs to be accessible to every skill level, I personally wouldn't be fulfilled if I spent all my time designing beginners kits. I want the ability to do more advanced work myself, but I know that sometimes when, particularly with our limited editions, they're really complicated kits. And with those ones, I knew that I needed to be able to have the right audience for them who wouldn't mind a more complicated challenge and who would actually embrace it. So that's why we launched our limited editions. The second thing we launched, which also enables me personally to follow my interests, is when we started launching the sewing supply shop. So at the beginning of the business, we only sold kits, but about 2 years ago, we also started then just selling the raw materials, selling fabric, selling threads. And what is exciting for me about that as a product is it means that I can stitch anything I want in the world, and I can use it to promote the sewing supply shop. So I don't have to create something that will become a kit. I can create something that's really just a bit wild, a bit niche, totally random for fun, and I can use that and I can say, look, this is the linen I've used, here's the threads I've used. So I'm still being able to kind of create something that has some commercial result for us as a business, which is what we need in order to build a sustainable long-term business. So launching the sewing supplies did that for me. The next one that did that for me was launching our paints business. So we now also sell loads of decorative paints. We sell unpainted frames. And again, because that gives us the ability every year to do this really fun thing where a couple of times a year we just paint really random frames. We combine them with really random colour palettes, and then we offer them so people have the ability to kind of buy a painted frame, random colour palette, and create something of their own. And that as a project is something that really excites me creatively. So by launching our own paints, that really feels like it's part of the product line too, and part of what we do. So these 2 areas of products have enabled me to be able to express myself. So the work I'm doing still helps drive the business forward, but in a way that I'm fulfilled by. And then the final one, which is really, really important, and this is like the new one, and this is one of the reasons I'm doing it, is our community membership. And the community membership, the one, we already have one at the moment, and then we're launching an updated version in January, and this is called the Makers Membership, and we're trialing it at the moment. The Makers Membership is all just gathering together loads of dabblers, loads of serial hobbyists together, like-minded people who want to create things together, who want to create with community, but want to also be pushed in their skill set. They want to be pushed to design their own things. They want to share that with other people. They want creative encouragement. They want creative support. They just want community. That whole concept gives me so much creative freedom, because from one day to the next, I could do so many different things, and I know I've got an audience there who are going to be so keen for it. So one day I could produce a video where I'm sort of mono printing off a jelly press, or the next day I could be Tetra Pak printing. The next day we could be doing sketchbook exercises. I will know within something like the Makers membership, I will always be able to find something that fulfills me, and that I have a ready audience there around who will relish that creative fulfillment, because they will come on that journey with me and they will want to express themselves too. So I say this because these products are things which I think are really great for the end customer, for the person who's using it as well. I think we're doing really good things. I think we're encouraging amazing community, amazing behaviours. I'm really proud of what we're creating for that reason. But on a really personal level, on a small level, I'm also so excited about it because of the freedom I know it's going to give me. And I say all this because I want to be really honest about the reason I launch different things. And there is very much a self-interest to a lot of the reason we launch different things. The self-interest is, how do I make this business really sustainable in a way that I'm enjoying? And so that's one of the other reasons why we end up going down the route we go down with various things, because I'm dead laser focused on the fact I need to feel enjoyment from every aspect of the business that I'm running, or else I could do something else. So that's kind of what I wanted to say. And I wanted to slightly debunk this myth, the idea that if you start a business with your hobby, that it's going to mean that your hobby loses interest for you, because I think it's actually the opposite. So a bit of a ramble. I feel like I went off on one there. It's amazing. This is the benefit of doing like long form videos, because I do get really into a topic and then I say all sorts of stuff that I don't know why I said it, or it wasn't planned. But I do love running a creative business, and I kind of want to express that, I guess. So I think some of the kind of the three things that I would end on saying about the whole thing of, if you are thinking about starting a creative business, or if this is something you're kind of interested in, firstly, I think the important thing is running a business doesn't mean you give up your creativity, and I think it can enhance it in unexpected ways. I think you never know how much more creative you will become the moment you have to make that commercially viable and you are facing those problem-solving challenges. It can really push your creativity. So I think that's the first one. I think one of the difficulties is balancing time and energy. Inevitably, having a business does put more pressure on your time because you have more of a balance of different things. Obviously, having a business does put a lot of pressure on your time, and you do have less time to be creative. And so that is something I think to be aware of, and you have to be really responsible for. And the other one is, much like an artist or a business or anything, staying really true to your kind of creative roots can be quite challenging in a business, because you can be inclined to kind of go for what you think will be popular. I think what you have to do in order to remain creatively fulfilled is not go for things you think will be popular, just go for things that you love and you're enjoying at that point in time. The other challenge is this whole thing of it's not passive. It's very actively engaging, but hopefully in the long run, if it all goes well and you build it gradually over time and you actually build it into something sustainable, it can at some point in the future really give you freedom, because there is the ability to have a team around you that give you the ability to find that time. And the final thing I think is what's so rewarding about the business side is that you can create something that doesn't just fulfill you creatively, but it fulfills hundreds, thousands of other people creatively too. You can impact thousands of lives by creating a product that people love. You will bring people happiness, and every single day, if I have a hard day, if the week is tough, and I get a nice message from someone saying, oh, I loved this has really brought me kind of comfort every evening, or someone who messaged me the other day saying her husband had to go away for work late notice, she's got 2 young children, and actually just an hour in the evening every day working on her pieces and managed to help her maintain her sanity. Those sorts of things just take me beyond the pure motivation of the day in, day out. There's a wider reason I'm doing it, and that is much harder potentially to achieve if you are an artist. I think it's harder to feel that direct impact on people's lives beyond creating something that brings them great joy in their house, say, or their home. So that is what I would view it as. But tell me what you think. As I said, I come from a business background, so I am kind of innately more inclined this way, and I would love to know what you think. Kind of people who are working as artists, I'd love to know, are any of those struggles that I said I think true, because honestly, I think the courage you have to pursue life as an artist, I think it's so brave, and absolutely hats off to all of you. And here we go. So here's how much I just stopped there stitching at the end. But I'll show you this piece because this is so nearly finished. Let me open it up off this frame so you can see. Yeah. So this one is a mini woolly to join our woolies collection. I haven't actually looked at it at all yet. So this one's a bit like my big one behind up there, but I'm almost finished. So I'll be framing that in a few weeks' time, but they're not launching till next spring or something, after my month of creative freedom. So, you know, sorry to show it you and then not have it available for you. But anyway, let me know what you think, and I'll see you next week.